Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
VOX, local and vocal, every day, every night.
1460 WVOX.
Now, live from Whitney Media, 1460 WVOX, the Greenberg Report, with Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner. You can join in the conversation at 914-636-0110. Now on 1460 WVOX, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Hi, I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenberg Town Supervisor.
I'm David Bach. I'm the host of Ball is Life and Talking Westchester.
Great, and we have a really great program today. This is Black History Month, and to celebrate Black History Month, we have a really great guest. Ron Cook, in 1965, integrated the Ardsley school district. He was a young, skinny 15-year-old black man who never was away from his home in Charleston, South Carolina. He boarded a bus for New York, and he carried a suitcase, never saw snow, and moved to Ardsley with Elaine Finsilver and Jane Summer, who are here today. And Ron, are you here with us?
I am, thank you.
Ron, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe just to start, if you remember your experiences being the first African American at the Ardsley schools?
Well, at that time, literally being a 15-year-old, it's difficult when you look back, because I know a lot more looking back now than I knew at the time. At that time, I was very inexperienced, you would say, in the way of the world. I knew a lot about our society. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. That was at a time when segregation was still at some of its highest levels in this country, and we certainly lived in a situation where there were, people thought these things had gone away, but there were whites only this, from water fountains to, downtown stores you couldn't go in, and still there were certain places you were to sit on the bus despite the fact that had become illegal. There was certainly white privilege evident everywhere. In the school system, the way police treated you, everything in life. And we lived our lives that way. There were white part of town, there were black part of town, and you lived your life like that. In '65, the guidance counselor essentially introduced me to the idea of moving to the north, as it is, to go to high school or to finish high school. I was a sophomore at the time, and the American Friends Service Committee, which is a part of the Quaker Society, had a program where they would take young, promising as it was, students from high schools in the South and send them to the North to finish their high school. And the whole idea of it was that going to these quote-unquote better high schools in the North would better prepare you for an opportunity to further education at the college level. Interestingly enough, though, the part of it that was most striking was I would be leaving my essentially segregated community in Charleston, South Carolina, and I would be living those 2 years with a white family in New York, well, just outside of New York City. And this was a huge change. I mean, I've never had that type of close association with whites in my life before, and it really was a matter of, well, what am I getting myself into? I should say, before even going on making that trip, all of it was made possible because of my mother. I had three sisters and two brothers, and my mother was raising us all as a single parent. And her concern was that, if I could do something to help one of my children further their education, then I'm for it. And it wasn't that simple now, because she was certainly fearful of what she was getting me into, let alone me being a little fearful of what I was getting myself into. But through her wisdom, her concern for her children and, her dedication to make sure that something better came of all of us and our family, she made it possible for me to make this journey. So, all kinds of props to her in terms of making it possible, even though she had some trepidation about sending her son away to a situation that none of us could have imagined us, being involved in at 15 years old.
That is so interesting. And I know, Elaine, Finn Silver, you've always been a rebel. What did people in the community say to you when they saw that you were integrating the school district? Were they appreciative, or did they resent it?
Well, we had to.
We have to take a break now. This always happens right when it's interesting. There's a break, but I'd like to talk about your experiences, and also after the break, want to talk with Ron about being the only African American in a predominantly all-white school. How did people treat you? So, Ron, could you stay on the line? This is about a 5-minute break, and then we'll be right back. I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor.
And now with Fox News commentary, here's Fox News Radio's Todd Starnes on 1460 WVOX.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next.
Friends, are you taking Viagra for ED? Well, you could be paying too much. Now you can take sildenafil, the active ingredient in Viagra, for just $2 per tablet. $2 for a 20-milligram tablet, saving $40 per dose. Marley Drug is a North Carolina pharmacy delivering sildenafil to your doorstep. Go to marleygenerics.com. That's M-A-R-L-E-Y, marleygenerics.com. Or call 1-800-452-1760. That's 1-800-452-1760.
FBI confirms they received a tip months before the massacre at that high school in Parkland, Florida. A YouTube user named Nicholas Cruz said in September he planned to be a professional school shooter. A Mississippi man saw the post. He called the FBI. He saw something and he said something, which is exactly what he was supposed to do. But the FBI said they could not identify the user who made the comment. Meanwhile, there is a national outcry among Democrats in the anti-gun crowd demanding Congress take action, but no one has explained what sort of new law on the books would have prevented the shooting in South Florida. The bigger issue is how to protect public school campuses from would-be attackers, campuses that for the most part are gun-free zones. The irony is, whenever there is an emergency in a gun-free zone, somebody with a gun normally comes to the rescue. I'm Todd Starnes.
Today's community programs are brought to you by Asaf & Siegel, one of the preeminent law firms of New York State. Based in Albany, the state capital, Asaf & Siegel now serves clients all across the Empire State and in New York City as well. Senior partner Michael Asaf is an acclaimed and well-known civil litigator with over 29 years of caring, compassionate experience, specializing in difficult and contentious high-net-worth matrimonial and family law disputes in every county of our state. Asaf & Siegel, his full-service firm, also specializes in real estate development, zoning, urban planning, bankruptcy law, and personal injury and health care matters, plus estate litigation and entertainment law with an emphasis on First Amendment issues. The firm is Asaf & Siegel. Michael Asaf is a senior partner. 855-339-5992. 855-339-5992.
Let's talk about how to save money in the office. In your office, first of all, why does toner cost about 25 times more than gasoline? And why does a copier lease often cost more than a car payment? These are good questions to ask. And here's another one. Why do we copy so much paper? Shouldn't it all be scanned? And here's the big question. Can we find a local company here in Westchester to help us with all of this? Here's the answer. Since 1990, for 24 years, Premier Business Solutions has provided answers for even the most tech-savvy and sophisticated companies in our area. Premier's A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau proves they deliver the most cost-effective and efficient office copying solutions and strategies. Premier's service and support is unmatched. We did a lot of work and due diligence on this, and we're proud and very satisfied to tell you that WVOX and WVIP are now part of the Premier family of important clients. If all this makes sense to you, call Mark Habib at Premier at their headquarters in Pleasantville for a free analysis of your office copying operation. Their number right here in the county, 914-747-3000. Or visit Premier's website at pbi-usa.com. That's pbi-usa.com. Premier Business Innovations, moving you and your company forward. 914-747-3000.
Ladies and gentlemen, be ready. For the first time in New York, this new show, The Seer, with Prophet Zogo. Every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., Wednesday 5:30 p.m., and Saturday 6:30 p.m. Your life will never ever be the same. So listen to The Seer every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., Wednesday 5:30 p.m., and Saturday 6:30 p.m. here on 1460 WVOX and WVOX.com. Your life will never ever be the same.
With business news at 20 past the hour, here's the latest update from the Fox Business Network on 1460 WVOX.
From the Fox Business Network, stocks opened lower, then turned higher. The Dow opened over the 25,000 mark, following a report saying home construction picked up last month to the highest level in more than a year. Groundbreakings on new homes rose 9.7% in January. Coca-Cola shares opened up 1%. Its soda sales were flat, but Coca-Cola sold more teas, coffees, and vitamin water in the recent quarter. Campbell's Soup shares opened down 4% after a disappointing quarter. Its new Campbell Fresh refrigerated soups and juices were not as popular as expected, and the Wall Street Journal says Campbell's and Walmart had a disagreement on promotional pricing and shelf space for canned soup. Southwest Airlines shares opened higher. The company is adding some new nonstop routes starting in August. With the Fox Business Report, I'm Ginny Cosola.
Friends, are you taking Viagra for ED? Well, you could be paying too much. Now you can take sildenafil, the active ingredient in Viagra, for just $2 per tablet. $2 for a 20-milligram tablet, saving $40 per dose. Marley Drug is a North Carolina pharmacy delivering sildenafil to your doorstep. Go to marleygenerics.com. That's M-A-R-L-E-Y, marleygenerics.com. Or call 1-800-452-1760. That's 1-800-452-1760.
VOX. From Westchester, and now all over the world.
1460 WVOX.
Now back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Hi, I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor with David Bach. And we have a really interesting program. Right before the break, we were interviewing Ron Cook, who was the first African-American to attend the Ardsley schools. And he was able to do that because he moved from Charleston, South Carolina, because of the generosity of Elaine Finsilver. And Elaine is one of Greenberg's rebels, and she's always been an activist. And when you invited an African-American to Ardsley to go to the schools, was everybody thanking you and appreciative because you were integrating the schools? And
well,
did you get any awards?
Yeah, I got a big award. I got spit from my neighbors. Originally, we got Ron through the Quakers, which was a Southern student project. And we were just blessed to be given Ronald. And I the first introduction I had to resistance was the superintendent of the Ardsley High School, because Ron had graduated as a sophomore and was coming up to us as a junior. And the superintendent at that time was from the South, and he immediately wanted to put Ron back a grade. And so I, of course, had my words with him, and he said, okay, but he was not very supportive of that. But Ron did go in as a junior, and I was happy with that. The community, well, there was some in the community. One of the qualifications to have Ronald was that we had to have the people in the community had to raise some money to support him, to give him an allowance, because we were not exactly wealthy people. And we had to have a backup family, and we had to have a family. So I said, well, we'll be the family. We could not find a backup family, but the community liberals at that time raised money and helped support Ronald. I think Ron can tell you more about how the school accepted him or did not accept him.
Let's ask Ron. Did your fellow students accept you?
Well, it's a mixed bag. I have to back up just a little bit in terms of, well, I guess I integrated with talking about it, because school was, like I say, it was a completely different situation from me. I went all my schooling in Charleston with other black students, and here I was in a school where not only was it completely a white student body, but everything around it was white. You know, in Charleston, you know, even though we lived in segregated communities, you would interact with the white community through commerce or through the police or something. So we always knew about and interacted with white folk, but it was never really the opposite. You know, white folks weren't always interacting or cooperating or mixing as it was with us. And that was even more so the case in Ardsley, because, I mean, everything literally was white. And when I say white, I mean white people everywhere, everything and that kind of stuff. So I had no, you could say nothing to fall back on in terms of who I could talk to, who I could relate to, except for the family. And Elaine, let alone Elaine and Charles, you know, her husband, and Jane and Josh and Amy, that was the foundation, the rock, what made it possible for me to deal with the situation in school. Because, again, in school, it was like, you know, I felt a lot out of place. There were a few people who were kind. There were a few people who were probably more shocked and amazed that we were associating for the very first time with a black person in school. And, you know, there were the nasty remarks. There were the really strange and darting kind of looks, and there were people who would spit, curse. You know, I've been thrown out of I was assisting a photographer at one of the school games, football games. I was thrown out. We refused a haircut at barbershops. I mean, the either what you call latent racism or just the ignorance. That was a lot of what came into play there.
That's
and
really
at the same time, as Elaine was saying, she fought to not have me put back when I got there, so I had to still perform as a student. You know, I had to show that what she fought for and what the American Friends Service Committee was trying to do was a program that I could make a mark, you know, instead of being looked at as, well, this dumb black student we got in our school now. So there were a lot of difficult times in school, around school. I mean, like I said, there were a few friends, and things got better over the 2 years I was there. But it was a family. It was Elaine and Charles, Jane, Josh, and Amy, the family that made it possible for me to stand up under this situation and to be successful in the academic sense as well. And Elaine talks about it was a blessing. Actually, it was a two-way thing, because I can't think of having fallen into a better family situation than I did. That's what was a rock that made everything possible for me there.
And you got good grades in Ardsley High School?
Yeah, I got good grades. I made good enough grades to get a scholarship, 4-year scholarship to Lake Forest College. I was, involved in some activities in school, from the track team to the student council and Key Club and various other things. I did things that any normal student would do, and I did them well. And I was successful in that sense. But it was all nonetheless still a challenge. You go into a student council meeting or you go into any kind of situation, and you always wind up being the only black person, and people expect you to speak and know about all things that relate to all black people. And I mean, it was a very challenging kind of situation from the beginning to the end. Like I say, there's some improvements towards the end, but the situation, again, all made much better and bearable and possible because of the family situation at home.
That's great. And what are you doing now?
Well, now I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. I work for myself. I had worked for the federal government for about 10 years. And I'm also doing, one of the things that I grew into partially from that experience and from the college experience, I've always been doing what otherwise would be called community work. I've been involved in community organizations. Even in college, I did tutoring in local communities, was involved in the local...
Yeah, we have to take another break. We have to take another break, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. So if you could stay on the line, would really appreciate it. I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor, and after this break, we'll speak to Jane Summer, who grew up with Ron for while he was a student, and she was a young girl, and we'll find out about her experiences, and we'll talk more with Ron and Elaine. So we'll be right back in a couple minutes. I'm Paul Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor.
With world and national news, here is the latest update from Fox News Radio on 1460 WVOX.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The Parkland, Florida community remembering the 17 people murdered on Valentine's Day. Their accused killer, Nicholas Cruz, made his first court appearance a day later.
It was by a video conference with the judge. His appointed attorney says the 19-year-old feels remorse, and Florida's attorney general has said the state will most definitely seek the death penalty.
Fox's Steve Harrigan. There are funeral services today for 2 of the victims. The president calling for action on mental health.
He did not mention gun control at all, and he came into huge criticism as a result of that.
Fox's Doug McElway. Some new policies in place at one of the world's largest casinos after the massacre back in October at a concert in Las Vegas, where the gunman fired from his hotel room, Caesars, saying it will check guest rooms every 24 hours, even with a do not disturb sign hanging. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Between the junk you've accumulated and purged and the waste generated from everyday living, you need to rely on your trash removal service to get the job done. You deserve honesty. You expect reliability. You need CRP Sanitation. Since 1979, CRP Sanitation has been the trash removal company homeowners, business owners, and contractors have depended on for honest, reliable service. No dispatchers in different locations who don't know you, no answering services. CRP employees answer the phones, and they know their customers by name. Communication is a key to their success. Communication with you. Other companies offer the world and never deliver. CRP Sanitation offers exactly what you get. Honesty, dependability, professionalism. Doing some remodeling? CRP Sanitation can estimate the weight and needs of a dumpster, and that means not paying more than you need or having to add additional services at additional costs. Not all trash companies are created equal. Family-owned CRP Sanitation. Westchester's finest in sanitation. Call 592-4129. 592-4129.
The forecast for Westchester County and the vicinity for today, we'll see rain this morning. Should taper off to showers as the temperatures will fall back into the lower 50s, upper 40s by the later afternoon. Mostly clear tonight, overnight lows falling back mid to upper 20s. Increasing clouds on Saturday, highs near 40. Snow developing later Saturday night into early Sunday. As much as 48 inches is possible with winter storm watches posted. I'm Steve Pelletieri, junior reporting for 1460 WVOX, the Whitney Global Media Station.
Steve Pelletieri's Eye on Weather is brought to you on WVOX by Energy and the Indian Point Energy Center, right for New York.
At Indian Point, we've helped power Westchester and New York City for about 4 decades. Recently, as part of an agreement with New York State, we are working toward an early and orderly shutdown of the facility by 2021. Until then, we'll continue safely generating about 25% of the reliable, round-the-clock electricity that powers the city and Westchester, all with virtually no greenhouse gas emissions. Safety is, as it always has been, the top priority for everyone at the plant. We will continue to keep Indian Point fully staffed, and full-time inspectors from the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission will monitor our daily operations. We'll also continue to play an important role in our community as a taxpayer and active participant in local charities. Indian Point Energy Center is still working for you, and it's our honor to continue to serve the people of New York. If you have questions about our ongoing operations, please visit safesecurevital.com.
VOX. There's always something happening at 1460 on your radio.
1460 WVOX.
Now back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning. I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenberg Town Supervisor, and we have an interesting program. We've been talking with the first African American who integrated the Ardsley school district, and with the family. Ron Cook integrated the schools in 1965. And David, you had a question?
Yes. I was wondering, tell us a little bit about what your graduation was like, and being the first African American kid to graduate. What was, how did the school react? How did your family react? What was that event like?
Well, it's again a mixed bag, a good one, for the most part. I was reminded, just talking with Elaine and Jane a couple of days ago, that at the graduation, when they called my name to get the diploma, that everyone stood up. And honestly, I'd forgotten that. But that was something that was coincident with the fact that I was voted the most respected in the class. And, this is despite the fact that a lot of things negative that hadn't happened during that experience. I think what it also showed is that there was some growth and some genuine respect among a lot of those people there. Now, incidentally, and Elaine could probably tell you this story better than I can. Jane or Elaine, please tell them what happened after that graduation on the night of a party that followed the graduation.
Ron graduated, and everybody was thrilled and happy, and we thought it was a very positive experience. And then I get a call from Ron, who was out partying with the class, and he said, would I please come and pick him up? And I said, why should I come and pick you up? He said, well, they won't let me in the pool. So I went and picked him up.
Wow, this is really amazing. So basically, people were accepting you, but there still was racism in Ardsley at that time.
Undoubtedly. There were instances, even when people who were otherwise close friends of mine admitted to, well, yeah, I like you and you're a nice guy and all that, and the but went into things that had to do with family interactions, social interactions, dating, all those kinds of things. And it's sort of like, well, you can see a little bit of change coming, and you can see that people have been affected, but there still is, and we know it to this day. There's still things, latent racism, institutional racism, things and pushed into people's consciousness for all the time we've been in this country, that even when those who want to do good, there are things within them, this society society is institutionalized into the thinking that we have, that it affects how we relate to each other. And like I say, it can be on that very personal level, even though you can stand up and respect. And that respect what was shown to graduate may have been just, hey, man, you made it through these 2 years despite all the stuff that was thrown in front of you. But that's something that we have to realize is something 50 years later, not just my experience, but 50 years later since Martin Luther King, since the rebellions in this country. I mean, 50 years ago, even that's when Medicare came into being for the first time. We had a semblance of national health care, and now 50 years later, the heroic and historic Obamacare tries to give health care to all, but a new administration is trying to destroy it. I mean, if it's good, try to fix it or improve it, because certainly there were failings in the program, but it's sort of like we think we've come a long way, but we look back and we see some of the same things 50 years ago are still affecting us today.
You know, one of the questions...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the people in the North never would consider themselves, racist, and the people in the South, you just assume are racist. Since you had different types of interactions when you were in the South, because although it was segregated, you were interacting with more, whites than, say, when you were in Ardsley, did you feel that in some ways living in the South was easier? And did anybody in the South, were they more outwardly racist, but inwardly were they nicer and were, do you follow what I'm saying?
I do, in a sense. It's hard to say it was nicer. It was different. I mean, it's like some people have said at times it's better if someone's going to stab you in the back, they at least show you the knife first as opposed to let you turn around and then they stab you in the back without showing it to you. It was different. I wouldn't exactly call it nicer because I still didn't like the negative thing, the negative connotation, whether it was in the South or in the North. And certainly that difference in experience just goes to show us whether it was the South, the North, the East, or the West, there might have been different ways that people experienced prejudice, segregation, racism, but it was still there.
Well, Ron,
I wouldn't say I would prefer this one or as opposed to another. It's just something that we need to deal with. We have to get rid of it, and it's still a problem for us in this country.
Ron, I remember asking you that very question, and you said in the South you knew where you could go, and in the North you weren't sure where you could go.
Oh, that's interesting. Right. So that's sort of an interesting follow-up to the thought that I had. In terms of after you graduated, from high school and in college, did your experiences in Ardsley help you become as successful as you've been?
No doubt about it. Even when you count in all the negatives, there were overriding positives that I consider a very good thing, and most of it, again, and I can't overemphasize this enough. All of it stemmed from the family relationship. I had a very good family relationship in Charleston before I came up north, as it was. And there just couldn't have been a better situation for me to fall into than the one that I had with Elaine, Charles, Jane, Josh, and Amy. And that is what made everything else bearable and better to learn from, so to speak. And it certainly was helpful when I went from New York to Chicago, well, just outside Chicago, for a college experience, because again, it was an integrated college, and it was still a minority, literally a very small minority of black students there, but the experiences that I had in Ardsley certainly prepared me for that, academically as well as the social aspect of it. And subsequent to that, everything, as we continue to grow in life, hopefully you learn from it. Hopefully you become a better person for it, and hopefully it provides some light in your life as to some of the things you need to deal with. And in that regard, family remains extremely important to me. You know, it also gave me an idea of some of the fundamental things in this country and our life that still need to be changed. You know, you can see benefits coming. We know that over the years, the incomes have been raised for black folk. Unemployment still is twice that of white folks, and fundamentally, there's still racial problems in this country. You know, and for my own self, that means that the things that I do in my life must in some way try to contribute to changing that situation. As I said, when I got to college level, I was involved in community organizations trying to help other people. When I left college, that was more than anything else, one of the major things I wanted to continue doing. So when I left Lake Forest College and came to Washington, you know, I came with a few other folks who left that school too, who wanted to be involved in community organizing, who wanted to do things to take the skills that we had learned, you know, the academic and professional skills, to try to help other people around us.
Great. We have to take one more break. This is the last break for this show, so if you could just stay on the line, I'd appreciate it. And I want to ask Jane how it felt to grow up with Ron right after the break. So we'll be right back in a couple minutes. I'm Feiner, Greenberg Town Supervisor, and we're celebrating Black History Month with the first African American to integrate the Ardsley schools, Ron Cook.
With world and national news, here is the latest update from Fox News Radio on 1460 WVOX.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The Parkland, Florida community, remembering the 17 people murdered on Valentine's Day. Their accused killer, Nicholas Cruz, made his first court appearance a day later.
It was by a video conference with the judge. His appointed attorney says the 19-year-old feels remorse, and Florida's attorney general has said the state will most definitely seek the death penalty.
Fox's Steve Harrigan, their funeral services today for two of the victims. The president calling for action on mental health.
He did not mention gun control at all, and he came into huge criticism as a result of that.
Fox's Doug McElway. Some new policies in place at one of the world's largest casinos after the massacre back in October at a concert in Las Vegas where the gunman fired from his hotel room. Caesars saying it will check guests' rooms every 24 hours, even if it has a do not disturb sign hanging on the doorknob. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Wildfires burn millions of acres across the country each year. And each year, wildland firefighters battle to contain them. But they can't do it alone. For some communities, it's not a question of if wildfires strike, but when. And a single ember can travel more than 1 mile. As it twists and turns and floats through the air, that single ember can find its way to where you live and can ignite and destroy your home or your community. That single ember can be just as dangerous as the wildfire itself. You can't control where the ember will land, but you can control what happens when it does. You can take action now to prepare your home and your community for wildfire. Get fire adapted. Learn what you can do now to reduce wildfire damage later at fireadapted.org. Prepare, protect, prevail. A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council. Learn more at fireadapted.org.
For almost 90 years, Modern Paint and Hardware has been a trusted name in New Rochelle, recognized throughout the community for superior service and quality paint and hardware. There are 2 Modern Paint New Rochelle locations. That's right, the original store at 316 Huguenot Street and their store at 1335 North Avenue. But there's more. The same great service, national hardware and window treatment brands such as Hunter Douglas and superior paints, including the Benjamin Moore brand, are now open in Katona, Ardsley, Nanuet, Pomona, Lewisboro, and Bedford Hills. So whether you shop in one of our beautifully designed and well-organized stores, order online, or place a special order by phone, you can rest assured that a member of the Modern Paint and Hardware family is ready to treat you like family, exceeding your expectations with service and a smile.
VOX, America's great community station.
1460 WVOX.
Now, back to the Greenberg Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Hi, this is Paul Feiner, and I was mentioning before the break that this is definitely the most interesting program that I've had since the 20-plus odd years that I've been interviewing people. David, you had a question?
Yes. What was it like growing up, just having this kid come into your house? How did it affect, your home life, your social life? Because this was a big change to your world.
It was fantastic. I was the oldest kid until Ron came. So when Ron came, I had an older brother, and it took the attention off of me. That was somewhat of a relief and a distraction from me. So everyone wasn't focused on me, and I wasn't getting blamed for everything. On a more serious note, we always had people coming in and out of the house. It drove me crazy because I'm an introvert. Every Thanksgiving, we had foreigners, people from India, students from Germany, Japan. So I was used to that. And we always grew up with black folk. We went to the county camps, which were very fully integrated. My mom was a dancer and had very close African-American friends with kids that were about my age. We were active in the civil rights movement. Even though I was young, I think I learned to walk on a picket line. So it wasn't that strange for me. And asking me what it was like to have Ron come into the family is like asking me what it was like to have my brother, Josh, or my sister, Amy. I mean, he was my brother, and I felt so safe having Ron in the house, and simultaneously so protective of him.
Now, did living with an African American at a time when people weren't used to that, did that impact some of your friendships in the schools? Did some people stay away from you because they felt they just didn't want to associate with your family?
Yeah. I had two sets of friends. I had the neighborhood friends, and I had my school friends. And I think the neighborhood friends, they weren't really friends by choice. They were friends by location. And they were a little bit more difficult. They were curious, and they really couldn't run away. So I think we had a cooling off period. We also had a neighbor, as I think my mother mentioned, who every time he would drive by the house, he would slow down, stop, roll down his window, and spit on our lawn. It should have frightened me, but I was too young, and I felt very courageous and brave and willing to die for my family. My personal friends, it was a time when, the cream rose to the top, and my friends that thought it was weird or called me names, I dropped them. And when Ron came, I was in 6th grade, and at that time the middle school was a separate school. The high school was 7 through 12. So when I moved into 7th grade, I was in the same building with Ron, and people knew that he was my brother because I would see him in the hallways, and he would say, "Hi, hey, what's happening?" And the friends that were cool with it and interested and wanted to get to know him were my dearest friends.
You know, I just sort of thought of something. Greenberg is known nationally for having scattered site homes, and there was some lower income apartments in a wealthier section of Ardsley, built pretty close to right after, Ron graduated. Do you feel that what you did sort of paved the way and made it easier for the community to accept low-income housing in their backyard? And did the community accept it? The community accepts it now.
I remember when they built that. I remember that fight, and I remember in our immediate neighborhood, my mother and stepfather were the only family immediately who supported that. I'm sure that Ron had an effect on that. But still, to this day, African Americans are only 4% of the high school. Yet, minorities make up almost 30% of the high school, which is, I mean, when I was in high school, it was Ron and one Chinese American family. That was it.
Now, how did the Chinese family, how were they treated? Better? Probably better, right?
Totally integrated. Totally. He had friends. No one to my knowledge teased him, made fun of him. But, in that low-income neighborhood, there's a sign. I don't know how many people have driven around. There's a sign that says, you can't deal drugs in this neighborhood. In no other neighborhood in Ardsley have I ever seen a sign like that. And I know from personal experience that drugs have been exchanged in other neighborhoods.
Ron, has the experience that you had, motivated you to, do more to help other people who are less fortunate?
Undoubtedly. I've learned of the activism that the Fence Silver family had, and, that was something that was very important to me. I was also aware of friends of theirs who were active in helping other folk. That was very important to me, and it certainly lasted through some of the experience I had in college and since then. Like I said, even to this day, and my continued involvement in activist things, and particularly with a Black History calendar that we've been doing. And one of the things, it reminds me of a story that I remember. This father and several other Black men and women were taking a bus from the segregated South during the 1950s, and they were heading north, as many families had begun to do. They stopped in a town along the way, and the driver told them to quickly use the restroom facilities and move on, because this town was known as particularly being inhospitable to Black folk. Now, not only were the restroom facilities segregated, but the white facilities were free, and the Black folks had to pay to use the facilities. Now, the poor Black travelers had barely some coins among them. They bought the bus tickets and they had the food in the brown bag, so there was barely any money. No one had money to pay for the toilet facilities. This one older person among the travelers said he was going to use a dime that he had to use the facilities. And he said to the others, "Don't worry, when I'm done, I will hold the door open so that everyone else can do the same." Now, the moral of the story certainly is all of us have benefited, whether we know that older person or that person that came before us. All of us have benefited from those who've come before us. Mm-hmm. They have paid for us and have left the door open for us. And it's a question for all of us: will you do something in your lifetime to leave the door open for those who come behind you? And that's one of the things that guides me in terms, like I said, of what I've learned through that experience and trying to help other folks in my lifetime.
That is great. We're running out of time, but I also wanted to mention that I think our community is very fortunate to have people like Elaine Finn Silver, who really is a trailblazer. And I've known you for years, but I didn't realize all these fantastic things that you've done. And one of the reasons why I've always loved being a part of Greenberg is because there's people like you who really have made the world a better place and given people opportunities that they never would have.
Still trying.
Yeah, I think that is great. What's the next rebel action that you're going to be taking?
That's a good question.
She's gonna run
I'm
for your
ready to
job.
go on a march against guns. I am ready. I'm almost 88 years old, and I'll still be on that line.
That's great. So, Ron, do you stop by in New York often?
As often as I can, but nowhere near as often as I like to.
Great. So the next time you're in New York, I hope you'll stop by and say hello, and maybe you could even make an appearance at the Greenberg Town Board, because I think it would be really great if the town board would recognize the accomplishments that you've had and your role in making Greenberg a more diverse community, and a community that accepts people of different ethnicities. So I'd like to invite you to a Greenberg Town Board meeting anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Paul Feiner, and I'll speak to everybody next week.
Love you, Ron.
Love you.
.1460 WVOX and WVIP HD2, New Rochelle, a Whitney Global Media Station.